Hi, everyone. Tonight I have Fluffy, who jumped up on my bookshelf back there last week and walked along without my knowing that he was entertaining all of you, completely me in the dark. Fluffy has such a fun personality. He's a clown and he likes to make me laugh. And his brother Chocolate is more of a mysterious sphinx with these blue eyes that are hiding in the black mask and his dark brown hair across his face. You know, the Egyptian cats, they were revered, and they are found mummified in ancient tombs. And there are so many Egyptian mysteries, including statements by U.S. government whistleblowers over the years that one of the suppressed truths of ancient history is that the Egyptians and even the Greeks were either full-blood extraterrestrials from someplace else in the galaxy or the universe, or human ET hybrids. And their knowledge of architecture and mathematics was so advanced. One of the biggest mysteries is the Great Pyramid of Giza. What were the King's Chamber and Queen's Chamber really built for? And why is there a third unfinished chamber right under the base of the huge pyramid? Each side of that big pyramid in Giza is 755.9 feet long on each side. And that massive limestone structure is estimated to be 5.9 million tons. Well, in July of 1982, I was inside that massive pyramid in the King's Chamber. I was there on a tour with my then husband, and when we entered the King's Chamber, I was overcome by a strong feeling that I wanted to experience what the chamber felt like without anyone else there, if it were possible. And I felt that there was something that I could learn at that moment in this place that I had never been until that hour. So I asked my husband to go ahead with the tour, and I would catch up in a few minutes and he would just answer for me when they called names. And I walked to what seemed like the center of the King's Chamber. And I closed my eyes and I waited for what I thought was going to be an intense rush of energy. That's what I expected. I don't know why, except that I was in the heart of a pyramid, and that's what my unexperienced idea was. Instead, what happened was exactly the opposite. What I felt was like a vacuum, no energy at all, an empty void. And in my mind came the thought, this pyramid is a machine. It was built to be empty in order to receive waves of energy. And that's exactly the concept that came into my mind in 1982. Waves of energy were destined to fill this empty vacuum that was the King's Chamber. So this week, I was startled when the American Association for the Advancement of Science sent out one of its Eureka alerts on July 30th, 2018, with the headline, quote, "Study reveals the Great Pyramid of Giza can focus electromagnetic energy into its network of internal chambers and underneath the base in the third unfinished chamber," meaning into the King's Chamber, into the Queen's Chamber, and into the unfinished third chamber underneath the base of the pyramid. Physicists from Russia's ITMO University and Germany's Laserzentrum Hanover wanted to know how the Great Pyramid would interact with electromagnetic waves of resonant length with the limestone pyramid structural sizes. The scientists first estimated that resonances in the pyramid can be induced by radio waves with a length ranging from 200 to 600 meters. You just think of a wave, and that each wave could be 200 meters long, 300 meters long, up to 600 meters long. And that is what they were ideally wanting to try on Giza. The scientists used mathematical models to understand how photons of light would react with a hypothetical nanoparticle that's in the atomic level, and that what they wanted to experiment with is, could they do this nanoparticle and make it, the nanoparticle, have the same shape exactly as the large Giza pyramid. Dr. Andrei Evolyukin, the Russian scientific supervisor and coordinator of the pyramid research, says, quote, "We as scientists were interested in whether the Great Pyramid could dissipate radio waves resonantly with the goal of recreating the pyramid shape at a nanoscale," close quote. The scientists assumed that there are no more unknown cavities inside the Giza pyramid. That would throw off their experiment that they had calculated with models if there were any other chambers. There are supposed to be 3, the king, the queen, and the one underneath the base. And it was also, all of their models were predicated on the pyramid being made out of limestone, which is a bit like a crystal. With these assumptions made in their research with that 200 to 600 meter wavelength, they were able to obtain pyramid-shaped nanoparticles. And at that level, the energy had been increased in those particles at the atomic level. The scientists' conclusion, published in the July 20th, 2018 online Journal of Applied Physics, states, quote, "We found that the Giza pyramid basically scatters electromagnetic waves into the substrate of that third chamber, where the focusing effect is observed," meaning focusing from a larger scale from the pyramid down to the atomic level. So it's focusing and increasing energy. Also, it was established that the pyramid's 3 chambers can concentrate electromagnetic energy at the resonant conditions. In general, one may conclude that pyramidal objects located on a substrate and supporting multipole resonances can significantly suppress the reflection of incident electromagnetic waves. And what that means on the Earth, that this approach could be used for controlling the radio wave propagation and reflection, focusing it. And then, because you can scale properties from large to small and sometimes small to large, such a behavior that they've now established can be realized in different spectral ranges for suitable material and geometrical parameters, close quote. I know this is technical, but this is a direct quote from the conclusions of this breakthrough science. And what it boils down to, if the pyramid's ability to focus and increase electromagnetic energy could be applied on a small scale, then more efficient sensors and solar cells could be produced to help the whole Earth with more energy. Now, last week, I shared with you another question that I posed in my July 31st Earthfiles report. What are white aerial triangles zooming in Earth skies? I read to you an email that I received from a Maidstone, England attorney who watched a bright white triangular craft move twice the speed he thought of any commercial airliner in the flight path for Gatwick Airport, which is where he lives. Since then, I have received other white triangle reports, such as this one on July 26th from a Nevada resident. Quote, "What the Maidstone, England attorney saw was our newest triangle aircraft." And it's as if this person writing knows some firsthand information about this white triangle that you and I and the rest of us don't know. He continues, "It is silvery white all over the entire aircraft surface, 300 feet plus giant wing, curvy surfaces, not square. It's normally parked somewhere in the North Nevada desert, possibly Area 51 outside of Las Vegas. but they bring it in to Nellis Air Force Base occasionally to show it off. When it goes out, it's accompanied by a tremendous number of support aircraft, both double rotor helicopters and large and small fighter jets. More than 24 aircraft follow it into the desert, and this aircraft, the White Triangle, is the size of a football field. That would be 300 feet long. Now, the difference with what the attorney in Maidstone, England, reported to me last week, he said that what he saw on the Gatwick flight path was completely silent. He said they could hear the small drone of the airliners that they could also see. But when the airliners went away, they had a distance in which the sound was. This triangle came, made this very solid, strange contrail, and then suddenly zipped in a few seconds. And that's why he was staring at it, contemplating what is this contrail that looks like it's solid with a beginning and an end, and nothing is dissipating, and realizing that the triangle, as it zipped, he could hear nothing, even though the rest of the world around him, he was hearing sound. And this writer, who is indicating that he knows about these white triangles, says it is very loud in contrast to what the attorney in England reported. He says, quote, "It sounds like 24 fighter jets with afterburners. I was posted as a security guard at Zell and Mary Lohman Elementary School about 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, directly across from Nellis Air Force Base, and every car alarm for 10 blocks went off on the ground. It really shook me up." And he's talking about when one of these white triangles was allegedly launched, because he is speaking as if he knows, even though the rest of us don't. "I tried to get my phone to take a picture of the white triangle, but the thumb security wasn't working. I had to punch in a code just to get to the camera feature, and the triangular craft was already gone into the sky. It rolled into my vision. It literally did a barrel roll like this. I saw top and bottom, and then it hit some kind of engine boost and disappeared in the blink of an eye." And that's why he says he didn't get any photo. "Linda, keep up the good work. I watch everything you do on your YouTube channel, like tonight. Hope you're out there, whoever you are. And I enjoy your reports on Coast to Coast AM. I also have discovered mutilated cows in the North Nevada desert near Pioche and Rachel. And for 10 years, I owned and operated a broadcasting unit near Pioche. So God bless you." I was happy to hear from this person. I wish we had photos, videos, documents. If anybody listening from Nevada or any other place has firsthand information about this white triangle and what the technology is and where it may have come from, and if it is back engineered from ET technology, and all of those questions that we're all trying to get some facts on, please get in touch with me at earthfiles@earthfiles.com. Just always think of a reporter who files news about the Earth. Earthfiles@earthfiles.com. And now, here's from another person in Canberra, Australia, who emailed what he saw early this year on January 7th, 2018. Quote, "I saw a triangle craft slightly elongated, not a perfect triangle, but an isosceles shape. It was completely white and moved in a straight line with possibly a shallow curve." Remember, the attorney in England said that the contrail had a curve to it, but was so thick and solid and didn't dissipate, and that's what really got his eye along with the white triangle. In Canberra, he says, "What caught my eye was how large it became in a short time. The whole experience was around 20 seconds. What I saw grew in size from a tiny dot to a clear, elongated triangle in about 10 seconds. And then it shrunk away again and then simply disappeared. I tried to follow its path and could not see it anywhere. I can tell you it had no tail. It seemed to change speed and size unlike any shooting star that you could ever imagine. And as I was in the Navy and saw thousands of stars at night while at sea, this was nothing like anything that I have ever seen in the sky before. What was most interesting was just before whatever it was that disappeared, I saw a tiny reddish ring for about 1 second. So it was white, it came up 10 seconds, got large, then it appeared to shrink, came a red circle, and everything is gone. I don't know enough about astronomy to say what it could have been. Can someone please tell me if a meteor can look like a growing white triangle? Can a meteor cross a portion of the night sky in quick time and then shrink to a tiny red circle, ring? What it looked like was something entering our atmosphere and then leaving again. The full size of the object at maximum was about maybe 3 millimeters by the eye looking at it at a distance. And it looked like it was 2 to 3 times any other star in the sky, and a well-defined isosceles triangle shape. And it shrunk faster than it grew in those 10 seconds, close quote. Now, here is another recent white triangle sighting on Sunday, July 22nd, 2018, in the countryside near Bath, England. Quote, "Hello, Linda. Have just watched your YouTube program dated the 25th of July, 2018. I would like to inform you of the following. I too saw a white triangular object flying at great speed at the height of wispy, thin white clouds in an otherwise almost cloudless sky on Sunday, the 22nd of July, 2018. I was out in the countryside at Bath, England at that time. I think it was about 4:15 p.m., 16:15 English. The object was heading northwards and was leaving behind a straight white trail. And as daft as this may sound, I had the impression that it knew it was being watched by me. Then the white triangle stopped and stayed still for about 30 seconds before becoming smaller. I assume it was rising and then vanishing from sight," close quote. So again, if any of you have any information as an experiential scientist or engineer who want to get some information to me, you can do it by email, and I always respect requests for anonymity. Or if it's sensitive and you want to reach me in a more sensitive way, you can hard mail. Many people hard mail to me. And the most secure is to get information to me by Federal Express. It costs more money, but it definitely seems to be the safest route in my professional life. If you have something that you think is truly professional and like a whistleblower's insight as to what these white triangles that might be 300 feet long and seem to travel extremely fast and can expand and shrink and disappear, if you could let me know, I would really like to learn more about these white triangles. Now, I think all of you who have been coming on Wednesday nights, and we have had sharing together, that you know that my priority is always facts, and facts that I can build up, hopefully, to truths that I can report. And it's in the category of science, the category of environment, and the category of real X-Files. And my definition of real X-Files has to do with high strangeness that after 4 decades of trying to get to the bottom of everything from animal mutilations to human abductions, government cover-ups, technology, to where we are today, that we are getting maybe close to at least an acknowledgement that we're not alone in the universe. When that happens, it will finally be the crack I've been waiting for so long. And that for those of you who have been writing me and expressing your kind support, many of your letters touch my heart so deeply. And I just want to say I want to thank you for all of the wonderful emails and your getting the books and all of the other wonderful things that you all have been doing. This helps me stay independent in order to bypass the policies of lies and denials that our government and other governments have had since World War II to cover up an alien presence, one or more, that haunts our planet. And now what I'd like to do is I would like to move on to questions. This is one of my favorite parts of Wednesday night, is to hear what is on your mind and see if I have any information that I can report to you. So, Lori, who have we got up for a...
Yes, I know you like to know where people are from. We had a lot of great check-ins from London, Sydney, Australia, Florida, California,
great.
Washington, Yorkshire, Pennsylvania, Argentina, and Long Island, Pennsylvania. So we've got people watching from all over the world tonight.
Thank you.
And we would love to thank Christine, Donna, and Robert for their amazing super chats so far tonight. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everybody. Thank you, thank you.
And here's our first question. What is your take on NASA announcing Mars cannot be terraformed, then Elon saying that it could be?
Well, that has been one of the conflicts. It's been being argued now for several years. And I remember, was it last year only, that Elon Musk was in a conference and somebody asked him exactly that question. And you know what he said? He said, well, we could explode an atomic bomb and that would take care of warming up the atmosphere, and then we could probably terraform Mars. And he may have been joking, but I think he also had a glint of how he might approach terraforming a planet where he knows that humans on this mission to Mars that he wants very badly to lead, they have to live underground. They have to go into something like one of the strong lava tubes. And then when they do that, they will be underground. So the idea that they could then start terraforming in dramatic ways on the surface might be something that he has considered. It clearly is a strange challenge. There is so much percolate in the soil of Mars that very few things would grow. Not everything would be completely defeated, but most things would. And if that lake that has been discovered under the south pole of Mars, that could be a salty brine 12 miles in diameter, 1 mile down, and then 3 feet of water across that 12-foot lake, if that is a signal that there could be more deposits of water, let's say maybe all over the southern pole, and maybe some in the northern pole because they both have polar ice, it may be, and it may be on the drawing boards of the Pentagon somewhere already, that they get in some kind of a lava tube, they close it all up, they pump in the atmosphere that we have to breathe, and then they might have a process, a system, in which they could get the water and clean it up and take the salt out, and that there might be enough water underground to support a Martian base. Then they would all have to be dealing with several things on the surface. John Brandenburg, the PhD nuclear physicist who wrote the book Death on Mars, he is convinced, based on information that he learned from a senior scientist at UC Berkeley, that our government knows that there was 1 or 2 hydrogen blasts above the northern hemisphere of Cydonia on Mars. 29 that is on or in the Martian atmosphere from Viking data that we got back all the way into 76 and maybe some other later missions, but data that he talked with or heard from a senior scientist at UC Berkeley. Yes, we know there was a bomb explosion on Mars, and that so shocked John Brandenburg that he devoted a good portion of his professional life to trying to collect data that would show that there is a reason for the hypothesis that there was some sort of a hydrogen bomb explosion in Cydonia. And part of it is, if the xenon 129 in the Martian atmosphere is 2.5 times that measured after 1945 in Earth's atmosphere, July and August of 45 being when we tested the first atomic bomb, August we dropped the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So if the Martian data on xenon 129 is 2.5 times what it was measured in the Earth's atmosphere after 3 atomic bombs here, why would that be on Mars? And his hypothesis is that you can only get this kind of xenon 129 data if you are talking about a nuclear explosion. Well, that as background would mean that one of the priorities that Elon Musk or whoever is going to go to Mars and start a base is that they will want to go to Cydonia. And as John Brandenburg has discussed in his book in great detail, and even discussed it a year ago at a NASA conference, that there's ancient archaeology and potentially a lot of skeletons, and that this will be a big archaeology project for humans on Mars. Now, supporting this, oddly, are the whistleblowers in the last 2 to 3 years who have talked to me, and I know that there's been other information, but at least I've gotten what I'm going to say next, eye to eye, from 3 people in a whistleblower category, that in their work, they have either seen archaeology on the Earth with their own eyes, or they have seen photographs in which there are hieroglyphs and symbols, and that they have also seen photographs from Cydonia region on Mars and the backside of the moon in which the hieroglyphs and the symbols match all 3 places. So Antarctica, Cydonia region in the northern hemisphere of Mars, and the backside of the moon. It's a dramatic statement to say that there is ancient archaeology in all 3 places and that there are hieroglyphs and symbols that match in all 3 places. But if we close down our eyes, our ears, our mind, and our soul because the information is uncomfortable or we don't think it's possible, then what we're going to end up doing on this planet is continue to live in a concocted world without knowing what the truth is about our own origin, about the evolution and manipulation of genetic material on this planet to create all kinds of life forms, including, I think, standing up Homo sapien. So what is the connection between Earth, Mars, and the moon, and everything else around and in between? That is a fundamental question, and I think that Elon Musk has probably been read into some program and knows that has a mission. So terraforming the surface of Mars, I don't think that's going to be exactly the first priority. They will have suits. They will have suits that they can go in some kind of dune buggy out to wherever they're going. And I think that that's how at least the beginning will be on Mars, while scientists basing their analyses on the data that will be collected if Musk gets there with a Mars base unit, then everything will be toward how do we make Mars livable? Is it possible to melt the underground water? All of that. And just think about it. I think this is exciting. It's 3 minutes, maybe 3 minutes and 20 seconds for light to travel from the Earth to Mars or Mars to Earth. So we may end up, depending upon the technology, delayed but news reports coming live from Mars to us about the beginning of a brand new frontier of Homo sapiens sapien moving out, getting their feet onto another planet in the solar system. So may we also have, in parallel with this exciting possibility, those big headlines around the world. Let's have it happen this year. We're not alone in this universe. We never have been. And as John Keel wrote a book with the title, this is a haunted planet. Lori, is there another question?
Yes, actually, there was a comment that Michael thought you would want to comment on. It was from John, and he said, "The pyramid is a waveguide. I worked in microwave telecom testing at MCI years ago. Microwave uses a system of waveguides to propagate the signal." Thought you might want to comment on that.
I wish I had a PhD in engineering, in physics, in astrophysics, in nanotechnology, quantum. I wish I did. But you're asking a question in which I, an investigative science reporter, would go to a physicist and ask them to explain how the patterns and shapes of various waveguides in relationship to these questions about terahertz having impacts from, we'll call it the bigger matter world, all the way down to the atomic level. I understand the concept. I don't have the depth of the physics to explain it. But what I am trying to do is, when we have these questions that are fascinating, and I don't have any experiential data or interview knowledge, I will try to find out more, and I will keep reporting on my Wednesday evening gatherings with you guys to see if I can find out more on this whole issue of the triangular shape being important to waveguides, but is it important to terahertz? It is implied in this article that this breakthrough in the science that it might be. So thank you for that question.
And we would like to also thank Robert M., John, and Olivia for their super chats. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So we have another question. Vanessa would like to know, what book would you suggest for someone to start out reading about aliens?
Well, this is going to sound like a self-serving answer, but I think, I would hope that my two volume book, Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1 and Volume 2, they were my second and third books. My first is just on animal mutilations with a lot of evidentiary data. But to get the whole bigger picture, that includes the beautiful crop formations that some seem to be a mathematical language by an extremely advanced mind, without question, not hoaxing that this is for real. Okay, so you have the beautiful crop formations, and in chapter 1 of Glimpses, volume 1, I start out with my own experiences and so many beautiful photographs, and get into the mathematical language and why some of the mathematical language in the crop formations absolutely confounded some physicists and scientists and to this day it is considered one of the major mysteries in crop formations. Then you juxtapose the beautiful patterns, the setting your mind on fire ideas of the mathematical language, juxtapose it with the repulsive animal mutilations. And yet, if you had volume 1 in front of you right now, and you were looking at all the photographs I have, and there's dozens and dozens and dozens, there is nothing that is bloody. There is nothing that is therefore gory. It is the pristine, bloodless nature of the animal mutilations that always separated them going back into the first half of the 20th century when these were first reported, that law enforcement knew that they were dealing with something that could not be predator, was not disease, and was not satanic cults. If you ever hear that phrase, it's coming from counterintelligence in the United States. They're very good at manipulating the public perception by putting out sentences and phrases that catch in a busy, overworked media, and then they expect that for 90% of the population, that those words that they have put out there to spin a subject are what will stick. And the words that started being put out, not by ranchers and not by the deputies, but by somebody in the government, was animal mutilations are predators, disease, or satanic cult. When you get into my Glimpses of Other Realities, Volume 1, I have a section on animal mutilations that are linked directly to UFOs. Lighted craft, lots of illustrations, photographs. And it's the law enforcement who told me at the beginning of my investigation at the CBS station in Denver, Linda, the perpetrators of these animal mutilations are creatures from outer space. And the reasons that the deputies and the sheriffs would say that is because they had seen the round glowing light in the sky. They've seen beams come down into pastures. I talked with a couple of different ranchers at different times who had seen one of their animals going up in a beam of light. And one, his face turned red, and he looked down at the floor, and he said, "I'm so ashamed." He said, "I was so scared that night I couldn't leave the house. I knew my cows were out there, but," he said, "I had to wait until the sun came up. And then when I went out to the pasture where the beam had been with my cow rising, I found her dead, unmutilated, and no blood." Those are the kinds of tight testimonies from eyewitnesses that are not only in the United States, but are in other countries, because I have heard from colleagues in other countries similar stories. Now, when you have a tight connection by multiple eyewitnesses, you can say that you're in the world of some kind of evidentiary eyewitness fact, because there are multiple. But how do you prove? How do you prove that non-humans seem to have a base on this planet that is not obvious to the surface life and has the ability to move in the skies, be invisible, project holograms that we can't tell from the world around us, hide behind holograms that are projected, neutralize gravity as easy as we pick up a book with our hand? All of this are supposed to be data points about the alien presence on our planet that has been here, one or more, longer than Homo sapiens sapien. So why the disconnect? Why all the secrecy? Why for 5,000 or Göbekli Tepe 12,000 years? Why has there been something that John Keel would say haunts Earth interacting with life in mysterious ways, manipulating genetic development, evolution, manipulating minds to make discoveries, as has been said about Da Vinci and Einstein, that they were influenced from the outside, and that you can't come to any hypothetical conclusion when you hear a lot of this, except to think we are on something like a 2-story or 3-story apartment building, and Homo sapiens sapien are on the surface, and that other life forms that harvest this planet, harvest maybe through the solar system out into elements and metals and all of the things that we need too, like gold and molybdenum and all of these valuable metals. It isn't just humans on Earth that need those. And so there seems, for a very long time in Earth's history, that there has been interaction with humans or Earth life sort of kept at an arm's distance from whatever, or plural evers, have been here with whatever agendas. So you get into all of that in glimpses 1, and then into and a taxonomy from people, not Linda, but from all of the people who have sent me their experiences and illustrations. There is a taxonomy of the various types that break down in the abduction syndrome. And then Glimpses Volume 2 goes into whistleblowers, military voices, some of the highest strangeness in the abduction syndrome, which, interestingly enough, out of the work that I've done, I have had more people seek me down who have worked or are working in agencies to talk with me about material that is in Glimpses Volume 2. And with that, I think if you read those 2 volumes, you are getting at least some depth about how complex all of this is, and you begin to understand why on various radio broadcasts and television and Ancient Aliens, I'm the one who has often said, it all looks to me like a 16-layer chess game. And you can't tell the players without technology, and you have to have very advanced physics to understand the technology. So I hope everybody listening, I hope you will check out Glimpses Volume 1 and 2. What about time for one more? The rain is still staying away, Lori.
Well, I think that if you're up to it, we have quite a few really great questions.
Okay.
So we could probably go for a little longer. And we want to thank Vicki and Olivia for your very generous super chats. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next question is, do you think the government could be using a PSYOP with the mutilations and the terrifying abductions?
Let me explain to everybody why the animal mutilations that I have investigated in the hundreds, going back to 1979, 40 years ago, why they are not a government PSYOP program. Think of a 1,700-pound cow or a 2,000-pound bull, big, heavy animal. And the sheriff, this is a real story that took place near Sterling, Colorado, back in around 1973. The sheriff was Tex Graves. He was a John Wayne type of guy, unemotional, very left brain for a sheriff. And he gets a call. He told me all of this. And it was his first mutilation. First. He had the good sense to ask the local Sterling vet that he worked with on other kinds of issues to come with him. So now Sheriff Tex Graves and the vet from Sterling. Go to the ranch. And Tex told me, he said, there's this big 1,700-pound cow. It's lying on its side, and Linda, it was warm to touch. That means it's been dead maybe 6 hours. It's lying on its right side, and so think of the ears, right and left. Had the left ear gone in a circle, left eye gone with a circle taken from around the eyeball. The left jaw, this is removed so you see clean teeth and clean bone. Ask a vet how you get the tendons and the fascia off of jawbone, and they'll tell you can't do it unless you boil it off. Coming down the body, was the removal of the udder. There was a removal of the vaginal and rectal tract in one big hole. And the sheriff said to the vet, I want you to do a necropsy right here. And the vet had brought all of his stuff to do this. I've been in a pasture with a veterinarian who took a cow apart in a necropsy for what took 4 hours. Very fastidious. It's sort of like for guys who take car engines. Well, once upon a time they could take car engines apart. I guess not so easy today. Anyway, the necropsy is very meticulous, and you're looking for all kinds of anomalies. And the sheriff said, the vet now is opening up the chest and stomach area. And in a few minutes, the vet said, I want you to look at this. And the vet had on gloves, and over one glove was something glistening, shiny. He said, Sheriff, do you know what this is? And I remember Tex said, I had no idea what it was, that he was raising his index finger. The vet said, this is the pericardium. There's a pericardium around your heart. There was a pericardium around this cow's heart. Sheriff, look at this. And I think I remember him saying it was a flashlight. So they had a flashlight, and he shone the light down into the chest so he could see clearly. He said, there's no heart. A 7-inch by 11-inch by 9 to 10-inch. It's the average size of a grown cow heart. It's gone. Sheriff, there's no fluid. There's no clotted blood in the aorta. There's no clotted blood in the veins. And this pericardium, there's no blood in it. And further, Sheriff, I cannot find any hole in this pericardium. You tell me who, how, got this big heart out of inside of a pericardium, inside of the chest of a 1,700-pound cow, without one surgical excision anywhere on the body. And Sheriff Tex Graves, he looked at me and he says, Linda, I started having nightmares. He said, we started getting 3-4 cases like this a day. We were getting to animal after animal after animal, warm to touch, hours only. No blood. No tracks. There's no tracks around most of these mutilated animals, whether it's South America, North America, Canada, Europe, it doesn't matter. It's always the same MO. And in Colorado, which is where I started investigating all of this, in the summer, just like in New Mexico, it can be powder, just like face powder that you would put. The ground can be like face powder. And you have a big dead animal that has the same pattern of excisions, and there's not one hoof mark. There isn't a rabbit. There's nothing. They're just lying in the middle of all of this dust with all of these excisions, and there's no blood. And I've done this many times at the risk, and I have always carried something that I could wash my hands with immediately. But when you take your finger so that you can feel it, and you go down on the excisions, it's not gory because there's no blood. What is interesting is when you put your finger right on the edge of these excisions, it feels like plastic. It doesn't feel like tissue. It's hard. And then in later years, when I was able to work with Dr. John Altschuler, the pathologist and hematologist in Denver, I did many cases for him, going out to, I'd travel in some cases, and I would take formalin, which is not as hard on tissue when you excise it to get it to a lab as formaldehyde makes everything really tough. So I would have a scalpel or scissors, and I would cut out the mutilator's cut. I would cut the sheriff's cut if the sheriff had been there, and label them and get them to Dr. Altschuler. And I'll never forget that one day he called me up and he said, I want you to come and take a look at the tissue that you just got a couple weeks ago. And he had a big lab and he had a stereoscopic, so you could look at one tissue on one lens and another tissue on this lens for comparison. And he said, look at the tissue on the right. And he said, that's from the gynecologist that I got permission to use these slides for our baseline work, that this is what laser surgery in a hospital looks like. This is what tissue that has been subjected to a professional medical laser, this is what it looks like. On the left is tissue from that cow that you just sent me. Linda, what do you see as different? So I'm looking between, and he's not saying anything, and the one thing I could see that was really different, the gynecological laser, it looked like if you shook pepper, a lot of little black grains. That's the carbon residue. We're a carbon life form. You apply a high heat and you will get residue of carbon. In the mutilation cut, the collagen had been cooked. The hemoglobin had been cooked by Dr. Altschuler's examination. He could determine that. But there was not one small black carbon grain. He said, I have no idea what the instrument is that is being applied in these animal mutilations because it does not leave the signature of what we would call medical laser that you're looking at on the right side. So when you start, and this is not the end, there's all kinds of things, serrated edges, where parts of the animal that from animal to animal might be taken, and that you can compare cases, and nobody knows about this particular removal. For a while that was teeth. There was Lynn Lauber was the head of animal mutilations up in Calgary in Canada, and he called me. He had seen my documentary A Strange Harvest that was first broadcast on May 25th, 1980, and he called up and he said, I want you to know from me as the chief investigator of mutilations in Canada that I got a copy. He hadn't called me, he got the copy of my documentary from someplace, and he said, I've watched it, and he said, I'm calling you to tell you that your reporting is exactly what we have been investigating here in Canada. And when I said to him, but sir, in your newspapers, because I have some, it says that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police in Canada are saying that the animal mutilations are being done by a satanic cult called O, the letter O. And then he said, well, that's what we put out to get the media off of our back, but it's not true. He said, what you've reported in A Strange Harvest, that's true, and I hope you will do me a favor. He said, we have been holding back that some of the molars, when you have to look, and in my book, in Glimpses Volume 1, you can see what a classic normal jaw teeth should look like in the bovine species. And then where, if there's a tooth missing, where it is missing on the mutilated animals. And so that was something that he and I agreed on for some time, that I would never report, and I didn't for a long time, even molars were cleanly removed without a crack or a splinter from the jawline. This is an example of how there can be details in the mutilations that are held back, animal to animal, trying to I guess dissuade anybody who would even think that they could just idly walk into a pasture with a bull and cows and just idly walk up to a cow mother with her calf and do to them what I've been describing. It isn't going to happen like that. There has to be a paralysis, and the beams of light that some eyewitnesses have seen take all of this out of the category of where we started with this question. It has nothing to do with human psyops, the animal mutilations around the world that I have investigated. And remember, this goes back to the early to middle part of the 20th century. We didn't have any lasers of any kind working even in hospitals till around the 1970s. And the phenomenon had already been going on. So I hope this helps some of you to understand. Yes, it is a disturbing part of the whole question of an alien presence on our Earth. But it is not gory in the sense of a horror movie that you'd see in Hollywood. It's the opposite. It's the precision. It's the lack of blood. It's the removal of internal organs without there being any surgery. How is that done? One surgeon at Rose Medical Center in Denver, when I presented him with a case like this, he said, you know, Linda, one of the projections is that as we get into the 21st century, which is where we are now, and I was talking to him in 1979 in the 20th century, he said, I think that we will end up having molecular specific surgery. And that means there will be no more cutting through skin, no more cutting through cartilage. It will be some sort of a frequency that will go down through everything, say to the pancreas or the gallbladder or the kidney or the liver, whatever. And it will all be done by layers of frequencies. And the idea of having a big scar, he said, will end. And then he looked, I had some photos in front of him, and that surgeon said to me in 1979, he said, what you're showing me and talking about these hearts being removed from inside the pericardium without any surgery on the outside of the animal, he says, that's what molecular specific surgery would be like. We would be removing molecules. We would not be doing hard cutting. So, who in the beginning of the 20th century, from what part of the cosmos, was using molecule specific instruments on cattle, horses, goats, sheep, pigs, rabbits, marmots, chickens, ducks, parrots around the world? That question is what I've tried to get to the bottom of ever since 1979. It's 2018. I've learned a lot. I hope you guys will study Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Glimpses of Other Realities, because what could be more important than trying to understand a long, many centuries presence that our own government refers to in its own documents as an alien presence? on the planet that we inhabit on the surface and have very little idea of what is underneath the vast oceans and seas and basins of water in the Himalayas, in the mountains. We only know where we live. And as we continue through the rest of this century, my prayer is we're going to begin to be more stable stewards of Earth and its environment, and maybe prove to allies out there that we could take care of Earth. And then maybe they will end up being among us, or being among the Elon Musk base on Mars. I find this a tremendously exciting time to be alive. There are scary things, but you never ever turn away from something in fear, because that makes you weak. You just keep going, and then you get stronger. And I hope that's part of what we're doing every Wednesday night here. I really, really enjoy your feedback. It's tremendous. Your questions. And next Wednesday, we'll be back together. And because every week more and more news keeps coming, I will have yet another subject to open up with news, and then we'll go to more questions. Thank you for this dialogue. Lori and Michael, thank you for making this possible. And God bless all of you. I look forward to more next week.